coming up on Sleep, Eat, Perform, Repeat.
I want a greater number of people to feel what it's like to not have the burden, both physically, certainly mentally, that I'm seeing out there a lot. And I'm trying to build a very different message. And that's why I went with Eat Up again. It's not cut out, it's invest first. I have a very, very, very simple concept around nutrition that some people find incredibly effective, and it is the mixed meal concept. It is exactly what we should be doing, but for some reason, saying it as a mixed meal seems to connect a little bit more. Carbohydrate, slow digesting, a protein source, and healthy fats. If you follow that principle for your main meals, you will feel completely different. Hello, I'm Daniel Davey. I'm the performance nutritionist. I am delighted to announce that I have written a new recipe book and nutrition book, Eat Up the Next Level, and that's out the 27th of October.
Lessons and learnings.
Today we spoke with Daniel Davey for the second time, founder of Davey Nutrition, performance nutritionist and best-selling author. Daniel brings a wealth of experience at the highest level of performance nutrition, having worked with Leinster rugby and the Dublin footballers. He brings a plethora of practical, implementable and simple advice for people looking to build better nutrition and hydration habits. His first book, Eat Up, Raise Your Game, had massive success, which we spoke about today, a top 10 for 27 weeks. His new book, Eat Up the Next Level, promises the same success. We asked about the title, the dedication, and thanks for sharing, Daniel, and what you've learned from your dad, and feelings around when a book is near completion and finished. Trust about what others share, cultures around high-performance sport, mixed meals, where they are important, and small things that make a big impact are great talking points. Plus, nutrition in the corporate world. Daniel explains why the gut microbiome is involved in every aspect of our health, mood, skin, immunity, production of essential nutrients, and well-being. We had a wonderful dialogue around eggs too. You can find out more about Daniel's work on his website at www.daveynutrition.com.
Daniel Davey, welcome back the second time on the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me back.
Anytime.
What's it like having a book that's in a top 10 for 27 weeks? What does that feel like when you read that and hear that?
I actually didn't know that. When you tell me now, I'm very surprised, and I have moved into I suppose a different level of perspective on what gratitude means over the past 2 years, and I'm grateful for a lot of things. And I heard Damian Brown, the record breaker, the man of the moment, talk about gratitude and the little things. So it's really, really nice to see that information that you share with the world is being received and people get that, and that it in some small way is helping people achieve what they want to achieve within their nutrition and their lifestyles.
I'm not surprised to see that or hear that, because most of my friends, most of the people I know, people I work with, people I interact with, that book is on the shelf or that book is in the kitchen. When you finally got it out there and you kind of had them few weeks after when it started to get into probably reality, was there a lull, like post-Olympic lull even, where you felt like, oh, the book is done now and it's out there? What did that feel like when it was in the ether?
That's a good question, because I know exactly what that feels like. And I feel a little bit like I don't know, in this particular period of time, I'm feeling something like that. And I don't know if that's because I've moved on from team sport or not. For whatever reason, I didn't get it with the book, because you mentioned the period of time, I suppose, that I felt that it was connecting with people. And I suppose even now, people are still, it's a small number, but people are still using it and getting it. So it is different. The other thing about the book is that it's 18 months or 2 years in progress, and then you release it to the world and you don't know what the response is. But it's almost like there's a long period of time for you to come to terms with what you've done and it being completed, and you're waiting. So it feels really good, I suppose, just without saying the same thing again, that it's having an impact.
The next level and the dedication at the start of it. We're always interested in who would you dedicate it to? Who are you acknowledging? You tell us a little bit as to why it was your old man you wrote it for.
Well, over now it's almost 2 years that he was very sick, and over the past year, coming to terms with losing him, you start to, and I think it's an age thing. I think when you get well into your 30s, you start to think about who has shaped you, what impacts you the most. And then you're obviously, you're thinking about your impact on the world. So it was an incredibly reflective period. And I dedicated it to him because of the impact that he had on me as a person, and the values, I suppose, that he led and that he lived. And for me, it was that he was very driven in what he wanted to achieve, but he was also an incredible listener. I used to sometimes you'd tell him something and he wouldn't respond. And did you hear me? And then he still wouldn't respond. But he was just processing what you had told him. And he was thinking about how could he give you a really thought out response. And there's elements of that within my own personality where people are going, what's the long pause for? But he had within food, within communication, within relationships, within his dealings with people, I learned a lot from him, and I was very fortunate to be able to read quite a number of the chapters to him while he was sick. So I dedicated it to him because of that thing. And interestingly, some of my family members feel like it was written at a very important period, and it'll be nice to have it dedicated to him, but also the references to him as well.
Thanks for sharing that.
You said he was driven, and I think we'd all agree that, Daniel, you come across as someone who's very driven, what you've achieved. Second book, bestseller, 27 weeks, as we found it this morning. If you were to think back maybe on your family or yourself, where has the origins of that drive come from? Where has its foundation, its seeds?
I'm really interested in nature versus nurture. I'm interested in the concept, and I've done a lot of reading around the space. And if I see studies, you see about studies of twins who are separated at birth and the different lives that they lead. And I know that there's a large influence from both. Both of my parents were creative and incredibly driven and very, very, very hard workers. And I think that we're a product of a different time. My granddad fought in the Second World War, and there was always this joke that when he left Ireland at the age of 17 or 18, he went abroad and he was working on farms over in America. And it was grueling. Those times were really grueling. And he got stronger and put on weight. And I feel like there's a lot of my family went through those really hard periods of time where it was you were fighting for your survival. And I mean, I grew up with those stories, and you didn't want to be the one that was lying on the couch or not getting out of bed because you'd be pulled out. And I suppose that lives with you, doesn't it?
With all the knowledge you've acquired, winning a medal in 2016, then obviously with Ballyboden I'm talking about, then you've got Leinster, Dublin, and even what you're doing now with Davey Nutrition. for people listening, when you're getting loads of knowledge and information from different resources, different people, different books, things you might be listening to, what is it about activating that knowledge? Because that's something you touch on, and I think we really see the value in that, in getting knowledge. But so what can you do with that?
I think what you're asking me is one of the most challenging things to figure out for me in my practice, because I work in behavior change, and I work in trying to ignite and influence people who want to change or want to improve their health, but maybe they don't have the will, or they don't have the drive themselves, or the interest, and you're trying to stoke that, and you're trying to provoke that. And it's the creative ways of sharing information where you're trying to hook. You're trying to say, this is achievable, this is attainable, this is something that you can live, but I need you to experience what it feels like. So I think a big part of it is who are you working with? Who are you speaking to? What is their point of interest? What will engage them? And how can you get them to feel what it's like to put actions and put habits and things like that in place for them to be effective? And it's that attention that we need to give to it that I love trying to facilitate in people.
Looking into that a bit more, I know from my personal experience anyway, working with individuals as a physio, and David, we've had conversations about this, how you can't just give them the off-the-shelf exercise program. You can't just give them the best practice or best evidence, research to say this is what you should do for your Achilles or your calf. You have to try and find what fits their lifestyle, what fits their nature, and the reason that they're doing it, the why behind it. How much importance do you give to the group around them and the environment they're in? So if we had two individuals that we are looking after and they're very similar, but one went back to a high achieving club, let's say for a sporting background, the other was going back to an independent sport where they're working on their own, and they mightn't have had a great support network. How much value do you give, or how much input do you try and give to their social surroundings and how they can manage that?
And I'm not just saying this, I feel it's very appropriate to mention that there's actually a small section in my book that's dedicated to building your team. Brilliant. And that it's really relevant for everyone in your life or in their lives to have somebody to, at the very least, share your journey with. And sometimes people make the mistake of thinking it's a specific friend who works in sport. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be somebody who cares about you. And I think I don't know if this is an Irish thing or something that's more a more global type of mindset, but we sometimes don't trust that others might care about what we have to share. And it's not about being selfish. It's about sharing the smaller things that we know are important to us to be effective. So whether it's going for a walk with somebody, or going to the gym with somebody, or sharing recipe ideas or meal ideas, the sharing component is a huge part of my philosophy around health in general. So the more that we can build a team, or more that we can build connection into what we do, and the more value we're going to place on it. So I think it's a complex concept. And, you talk about something like shoulder rehab, or you talk about a tendon injury that might be 6 months that you're going to have to be rehabbing it for. It's incredibly personal, and you're never going to know who's in somebody's environment. But what you have to do is ask that person who's going through that the questions. That's what I think is important.
I'm going on the train this morning from Coolmine into Pierce, and thousands of people. And say if I wanted to get to understand a little bit more about them, you're a performance nutritionist, Daniel, and I'm kind of looking around there on the train this morning. I'm saying, who here has eaten a good breakfast? Maybe they didn't all eat breakfast. Maybe some are just into the coffee. Maybe some are doing intermittent fasting, black pudding avocado. For the people going into the Docklands or more so into, say, the business world per se, right? What should they be trying to do a little bit more? Because we really see it with our corporate work here. A lot of the time, food falls by the wayside. It's not deemed that important, but you've got some really interesting quotes to say it really can separate high performers. So why do some people miss that, especially on those sort of training journeys? You're looking around and asking that question.
Because they don't. I have a very good friend, and I absolutely don't mind. I don't mind name dropping in this situation because he's been such a help to me, and his name is Declan Darcy. He was a coach with Dublin throughout that very successful period, and I've become very close, very, very close to Declan over the past 2 years. And I just use these words all the time because he will say, Daniel, you need to pay attention to this. And the attention is something I feel really, really strongly about. And it's building techniques to become much more self-aware. And I feel that I'm gaining the benefit of that in so many different aspects of my life. We kind of joked before a little bit earlier, just before we started, about boundaries. It's actually about knowing how we are very effective. So I know before I came on this morning, I needed to have some breakfast because anytime you want to deliver something of value, you need to have your energy stable. You need to be able to concentrate, and your brain is going to be deriving energy from glucose at a higher rate because I'm thinking an awful lot more about what I'm saying. So if you want to do that, I know I need a mixed meal. I need a slow digesting meal this morning. And I've had my coffee an hour and a half ago because I don't want that I don't want the buzz, too much of a buzz of caffeine. So these are very, very small things, but they really do make an impact on me and on my delivery. So even knowing what having a source of protein earlier in the day feels like versus not having it, or having a very simple carbohydrate meal versus a simple carbohydrate meal plus a protein, and how satiated or how your energy levels feel throughout the morning. Those are small things. And sometimes it takes having a conversation with the professional, or sometimes it takes stopping, looking at the space that you're thinking about and trying new things. And I'm all for curiosity and exploring those things and those habits.
Would love to unpack that a little bit more because there's so much value in that for people listening. We're always talking about like focus and attention and how can you sustain it, and if it's over 90 minutes or 3 hours or 4 hours. But what about the afternoon, right? That mid-afternoon slump when everyone's on their third coffee, and we see it here in the office a lot. Kieran now is one of them. Three. What's something we can do so that come 2:30 we're still okay, we're still producing, we're still performing, we're not irritable, we're not tired, and of course understand there's sleep and it's maybe the morning and things like that. But maybe what are the fundamental principles we could consider?
Well, we sometimes focus far too much on food, and that it is a very specific type of food when it actually isn't. It's more how you're living that period of time, and it's how stationary you may have been. When you eat food, we are going to produce hormones. Like, the process is digestion then. So the focus becomes digestion of that food. And it isn't just this, and it's kind of misinterpreted, this significant increase in blood sugar. No matter what we have, we're going to have a certain amount of lethargy. Well, particularly in office environments. So movement is a big part of it. It's actually...
Off you go, Dave.
Everyone's watching doing some squats.
Blood flow. And it's about knowing that if you're stationary for long periods of time and there isn't much blood flow, and you've been focusing on something for a long period of time, or you haven't taken the time to eat something that is balanced. I have a very, very, very simple concept around nutrition that some people find incredibly effective, and it is the mixed meal concept. So it is exactly what we should be doing, but for some reason saying it as a mixed meal seems to connect a little bit more. Carbohydrate, slow digesting, a protein source, and healthy fats. If you follow that principle for your main meals, you will feel completely different. But what people tend to do is grab a sandwich or have a carbohydrate bit, a wrap, or they have something that's not mixed and not balanced nutritionally, that does kind of inflate that bit of fatigue or that lethargy that we may feel in the afternoon. And then it's back to the caffeine. If we consume too much caffeine, we're going to get that lull as well. So it's the vicious circle of the habits that we're following not being effective. And I would just simply say, actually stop, try something different, adopt those three very, very simple things with, maybe standing for some of your meetings, getting some fresh air, making sure you're hydrated, not over consuming caffeine, certainly not in short periods of time, and have a mixed meal for your main meals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hugely interesting because I think when we see performance, we often straight away can associate with sport, with athletics. We don't think about business people. And we would have seen it, maybe it's Wall Street, maybe it's my upbringing in the films I was watching, but there was almost a badge of honor, cigarettes and coffee as a way to, that's all I had today. I'm just go, hustle, hustle. If we're looking at performance for business people as well, and often with the mindset towards nutrition, it's something that's an additional, it's supplementary to your day, it's supplementary to your energy and how you feel. How do you change? And you've said it in the book, and building with top athletes and top clients, they adopt a positive mindset towards food. They use it as something to boost their efforts, to improve their performance. How do you see the gap between that, who people who don't take advantage of it, and what's the first steps in changing that to say, okay, I want to be more positive around what I'm doing with food?
If you were like, even it's maybe a slightly extreme, well, it's not an extreme example, it's a perfectly good example of somebody in the business world who it was a cigarette and it was coffee, or it was skipping breakfast. Think about an athlete saying that, or what the response would be, and how ridiculous it sounds. If you want to do really well in a meeting or a presentation, or you're working on something that requires a lot of brain power, and you're saying, I'm too busy, it just, can you imagine some of the athletes coming to me and say, I just didn't bother, it doesn't make, I just didn't see the value. I had too much on. I just left off the breakfast. You go, what are you idiot? Like, what are you talking about?
I think Fred for United midfield yesterday had cigarettes and coffee before the match.
I didn't see the game, but I heard it was a frustrating draw. All right. But and I'm not trying to label anybody an idiot either, but the point is that we're talking about two completely different cultures. But when in the culture of high performance, we're thinking we make every decision, we should be making every decision we can to have a positive impact on our performance. It's the culture around it. It's not a badge of honor. You are undermining your performance. But what I would say is, and this is the change, and I've tried to use my own experiences within what I've shared in the book, but I've begun to adopt a vision type of approach to behaviors and what we want to achieve. And if you're really clear around the vision for your behaviors, or physically or in the projects that you're doing, what you're looking to achieve, well, now we need to establish the behaviors associated with that. And that's incremental. And if we can build incremental behaviors that lead to this vision and what we want to represent ourselves with, now we're making progress.
Yeah.
So it's a simple, but it's very effective.
What are you looking to achieve with Davey Nutrition? What's the big thing you're aiming for with that?
I have had some great experiences in sport. I want to continue to work in sport. That's the kind of thing that ignites my brain, both when I'm playing, whatever it might be, and when I'm supporting somebody to realize their potential. I want people, I want a greater number of people to feel what it's like to not have the burden, both maybe physically, but certainly mentally, that I'm seeing out there a lot. So there's a lot of anxiety and guilt associated with the reductionist type of approach to food. And I'm trying to build a very different message. And that's why I went with Eat Up again, as the message, where it's not cut out, it's invest first. So more people engaging with that idea and that message. I want to have as much integrity associated with the message and what I share. And I'm going to be moving more towards course-led learning in the coming years. And I have this vision of I'm at home in Sligo. It's absolutely pissing rain here in Shaftpool in Sligo, but I'm on my farm and I was out with my sheep at the weekend, and I would love to connect high performance to the farming world in a physical way. So I have this long-term vision whereby I would be able to share real life experiences of what real farm to fork would be like. And it would be quite immersive, but I want to keep the value of cooking and food and agriculture, and I want to wrap it all together, and I want it to connect to high performance physically and mentally.
Liver King now is listening and going, I'm coming over to Sligo.
Getting a bit of
Don't know if I've ever got as many questions about anything as Liver King.
Okay.
Brian, huh?
Let's not go into it.
No.
With farm to fork, and I think from my experience of it, I tried to cook some or grow some veg, and when it succeeds, the fulfillment it brings, the sort of I put that on the plate, or that sort of energy you get from seeing something you harvested, something you nurtured, to being something that's nurturing you now. What do you think it is the first step? I know we're in Ireland, so fertile land, huge opportunity for growth for veg and things like that. What do people have to do? Is it accessibility to knowledge? Is it accessibility to allotments? What is the first step for us to adopt that approach?
Well, I have started asking a lot of people within my own circle and just out and about, and we're moving a lot more and we're starting to meet people more. I'm asking people, are they cooking? And you'll be amazed how few people cook. And I when I say cook, I don't mean once a week. I mean that they consistently have a process around getting ingredients and preparing the meals that they have on a daily basis, and moving away from the mentality of convenience foods as much as we possibly can. And I was out on a potato farm in Meath last month, and we have tremendous food available to us, but the consumption of potatoes is still way down on what it used to be. And I think the first step is people actually, it's the mentality around food preparation, and it is using locally produced food as much as we can and growing that. I've been very honest with you. I've had some small herbs growing in the house and things like that, but it's the small things like supporting local and having foods that that your family really enjoy, that you can produce, and passing those experiences on, that I feel is the first step.
I have herbs in my back garden.
Good on you.
Yeah, I'm very proud.
It's great, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think even knowing that they're Paddy Reynolds potatoes, I think knowing where your food comes from on a different level, that's something. There's something tangible about that.
I had a brief experience of that living in London, going to get meat in stores, going to get meat in butchers. The butchers were always quite expensive, and I'd normally end up going to a supermarket or a chain. But a lot of them would say Irish fed beef and stuff like that. And I'd always go for that. And then I see Aldi and little sort of marketing, and it's around, this is Paddy, he's from Meath and he's producing this beef on his farm. It's huge because I actually gravitate towards that. But the message probably gets mixed because convenience foods have a strong marketing background and they're becoming more prominent in stores. What's the sort of battle land at the moment between, are convenience foods becoming more prevalent, or is it more a case that the organic are having a good approach on individuals?
My understanding is that the industry responds to consumer demand, and consumers will drive the demand for whether it be protein products or whether it be convenience products. That's what tends to happen. I'm going to be very honest and say that I know that it's only going to go more towards convenience foods. You know what? In the last, there's some crazy stat about houses that are being built in America not even have kitchens.
Oh,
not
I
even,
thought you were going to say. No.
Yeah, like that's the way that the world is moving, and it's usually the States, the UK, and Ireland, and we follow those type of trends. It's scary, you know. It's scary to think that that's the way that the world is moving. But you know, you can't let go of what you believe in either, you know, and what we have to do is, when people are interested and when people are open, that you keep driving the value and reminding people of what it means, not just to support local, but to their health.
Yeah. To their health. I want to ask you a little bit about that, Daniel, and the gut in particular, right? I have ulcerative colitis. I've had it since I was 18, so I know a lot about gut health. I've always been interested in it, and also connection with the brain. And, you know, you're starting to read, and you've got that research paper reference from this year as well. What is it that people listening can understand a little bit more about the gut microbiome, pre-probiotics, and why it's something to just maybe read about or learn a little bit more about?
Because it's involved in every aspect of our health. It's our gut influences our mood, it influences our skin, it influences our immunity, the production of essential nutrients, and our digestion has such a big impact on our well-being. And when I say our well-being, it's how we feel day to day and our ability to perform. And it's a huge thing now, even in athletes and within sport. There's a very close focus on it, because when you've got large volumes of food moving through the body, if they're not the right types of food, or if they're not really suited to the person, you're more likely to see gut issues, and they come to the fore. That's a slightly different issue. But what I can say is that we are only discovering more and more how important it is, and it needs attention. That word again, attention. In really simple terms, I think the wonderful thing about our gut is that it responds really well to a variety of foods, and it responds really well to good food. And in very simple terms, the better our diet, the better our gut. And there was a research study, I think it's almost 2017 now, it's almost 5 years ago. There was a study done on the gut health, or the microbiome, in elite rugby players. And it showed that the diversity of good bacteria to bad bacteria in athletes' guts is better than the general population. And they put that down to variety. You know, so the more varied our food, the more fiber we consume, the more that good bacteria can use that as a food source themselves and increase. The more processed foods, the more unhealthy fats, the more sugar that's in there, the more alcohol that's in there, the more that will breed bad bacteria. And that upsets the balance within the microbiome, leading then to a litany of potential health issues.
Here's a random one, but you've said elite rugby players and correct foods and liquids passing through the body. I'm a great man for English rugby at the weekend, URC when I can. After games, there's a tradition of having a beer in the dressing room, not even just after a league game. Do you walk into them dressing rooms and go, oh, just thinking about the beers and think, oh, geez, grimace a little bit? Or do you just, is it fine because it's so close to a performance outlay, like exertion on the players?
Well, the first thing I do is say, will you pass me one of them? But I when I came in to sport and elite sports, particularly rugby, it was a massive culture shock. And I remember being in some of our team meetings and saying, actually saying this, this is my opportunity to say something here. And it was a team management meeting. And I said, I think we need to look at our alcohol behavior here, because I think it's going to cost us in terms of our recovery. And I was absolutely shot down. They were like, absolutely
Drink up.
not.
Drink up.
We are not going to control this. The players need their outlet. It's part of the culture. There's no way we're going to change it. And I remember at the time going, this is bonkers. I was coming from particularly GAA. My experience there was 6 month and 3 month
Drinking bans.
alcohol bans, and we're not consuming any alcohol. And then the week before some of our biggest European games, the lads are drinking in the dressing room. It's just bonkers. And then you begin to realize that that's a symbol of just enjoying the moment and enjoying that short window after the game. And that's how they're doing it. Some players did it. Some players didn't do it. But in the large, it was never excessive consumption, by and large. And it is like, sport is about enjoyment and is about the game. So on one hand, you're dehydrated. Your focus should be food. It should be a carbohydrate, protein. You're talking about gut health. You might be carrying an injury and you're thinking about inflammation, and then you just got to go, hang on a second. This is the reality of it. And as long as it's not excessive, then I'm not going to encourage it, but it's just part of it. It's just part of it.
You'll partake in the corner.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, again, I mentioned it in the book, a part of participating in more of those experiences definitely allowed me to connect on a much greater, deeper level with those players to make bigger changes in the long term.
Yeah.
Nearly my last one for you. I'd like to ask a bit more about food balance and eggs in particular, because if you look, you go into a gym, everyone's having eggs, and we all like scrambled eggs and poached eggs, eggs Benedict, eggs Florentine, free range, organic, from the farm. Yes, but people actually ask me quite a lot. I'm a physio, I'm not a nutritionist. How many eggs are good? Should I have the whites?
Raw eggs?
Raw eggs, What's your advice on eggs, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm not surprised you get it a lot, because I get it a lot too. And if you look at the literature, if you look at the science around the consumption of eggs, it's kind of gone, it's gone like that, where there's been periods of times where you shouldn't eat eggs at all because of the cardiovascular risk and because of the impact on blood cholesterol levels. And then, that was kind of disproven, and the connection between eggs and cholesterol and cardiovascular disease was kind of dismissed. And then people start eating loads of eggs, and then eggs were back on the kind of the discussion boards again. And it seems that it is, like an awful lot of things, very much dependent on your genetic makeup, and whether it's going to have an influence on you and your health or not. And I'm talking about, I'm talking about excessive egg consumption. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 eggs here and there. For somebody where you're healthy, optimum weight, you're fit and well, your blood lipid profile is in a really good place, then 2 eggs a day or 14 or 15 eggs a week is still going to be in a very safe kind of balanced space. And I think it's looking at foods in isolation is very problematic because our bodies don't work like that. But I'm kind of trying to quote the literature and the science while giving practical advice and guidance and saying, are we really going to be eating that many eggs in any case that's going to make that much difference to our long-term health? I just can't see there being that issue. Does that make sense after that ramble?
No, 6-egg omelette tomorrow now. No, that's good.
You're not going to eat 6-egg omelette every day.
Yeah. No, not every day.
Do you know?
No, but I do eat a lot of eggs. I would have 20 a week for sure.
Scrambled,
poached. My kids like eggs, so I make them eggs.
So if you went and got your, when's the last time you got your bloods done?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And was your
blood
lipid profile really good?
It was okay. It was probably okay because it wasn't mentioned. I presume it was okay. Yeah.
So then, it's absolutely not an issue. If you were hypertensive, you had high triglycerides, you had high LDL, you were overweight, and you've got cardiovascular disease, I would be just that little bit more cautious about how I would approach it. But having said that, I don't think it was the eggs in the first place, and I don't think the eggs are going to be the problem anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's kind of looking at very individual circumstances.
Chicken and the egg.
It's all the pints, I'd say. Well, look, speaking of food, what's your favorite food?
I absolutely don't have one.
Variety.
And I get
variety mixed.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely. I think it's like it's really like it's an overall approach or mindset towards my food is that if I'm not sometimes having spicy food, or if I'm not sometimes having savory and Asian and fish, and if I'm not mixing it up, it's so mood dependent. Do you not think it's mood dependent, Ben?
Oh, it is for me, yeah. I had halloumi and eggs yesterday, gorgeous, and I haven't had halloumi. I couldn't eat it today. Doesn't even interest me today. Eggs.
I don't feel like I addressed. Like, I would love to have said, eggs are no problem. Eat as many as you possibly want.
Good. Written down. I'll tell my little man, because variety for him, ham and cheese sandwich for lunch, and he likes his eggs. Like, we're not yet on the Asian food with him. He likes salmon, and he's only 5.
Well, that's good.
That'll evolve.
Yeah. Don't force it. Trying to, nudge.
Yeah.
Daniel, from the show and hopefully from listening as well, that we ask the signature question, but I'm going to change it a little bit today. And Eat Up the Next Level is the name of the new book. What does the next level mean to you?
There's a next level of information in this book, and it's been informed by my experience around working with injured athletes and people I work with looking for more information on how to support their immune system. But that's not where the real wins have come for me. It's been that focus on mindset and how you build consistency. And the next level really for me is a new language around nutrition and a new language around food. And it's a language of positivity. It's self-talk around our behaviors and our attitudes towards food that are really positive, but you also begin to notice when you're not being positive and how you can come to terms and deal with those moments. So it's our mindset. The next level in nutrition is our mindset and our experience of food, and really giving that value.
Daniel Davey, thanks very much for today. We got loads from it, really enjoyed it, and thanks for answering so many interesting questions for us. Really enjoyed it.
And the only thing that people remember is that I didn't answer the eggs with
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you.